Very good morning and welcome to this webinar called In Tune with Winning. It's an absolute pleasure to join you this morning. My name is Tim Zunckel. I'm a radio listener, a radio lover, and an audio ambassador. I join you this morning from Lusaka in Zambia, where I'm currently working with a great group of radio stations, and radio on our continent is strong. And it's an absolute pleasure this morning to welcome a formidable lineup of South African radio practitioners who are passionate about what they're doing in the variety of sectors that they work in, as we unpack a little bit about what the Radio Awards means to the radio business in South Africa and the success that each radio station has in their own environment and the challenges that they have. Our panel this morning comprises of commercial radio, community radio, and campus radio, and it would also not be incomplete if we didn't have someone from the SABC who hold the lion's share of the audience and do an amazing job in the South African radio landscape. If you'd like more information on the South African Radio Awards, do click to www.radioawards.co.za. This year, if you want to enter, the entries have opened on the 16th of March and they close on the 31st of May, 2020. I've judged the Radio Awards for many years, and I need to tell you that don't leave your entries until the 30th or the 31st of May. You've already done the hard work. You've created the great content. Take the time now to put your entries together, write a very short motivation, and upload it onto your profile on the website. I also need to let you know that if you've had a profile in the past, you need to register a new profile this year on radioawards.co.za, but it's a really quick, easy, and simple process, and step by step, you'll manage to get it there. So radioawards.co.za, we're looking forward to hearing the best of the best from South Africa, and hopefully you and your station will be rewarded with some of the great work and the hard work that you've done with a radio award that can hang behind you, similar to the one that Stephen Werner in Cape Town has behind him this morning. Stephen said to me yesterday that besides radio, he's passionate about running, and if you'll give him some opportunities in the morning, you may find him running down the promenade in Cape Town. Stephen, it's an absolute pleasure to have you join us this morning. Besides running, I know that there was another one that you wanted to add to the 3 R's. Perhaps you can come in and let us know what that third one was. And then my first question to you is, KFM holds a very unique place in the prime media stable of radio stations, and you do really good work. I wanted to find out, how do you maintain your independence in a group environment, especially when you're operating in such a powerful group of radio stations?
Hi, Tim. Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's the 3 R's. We need 3 R's or 3 M's or 3 letters in radio. So we have music, mornings, and marketing, the 3 M's. So we have radio, running, and records. I collect records and vinyls. So the geek in me is someone who collects old vinyl records, and I have a very collectible Sgt. Pepper pressing in my collection. That's my prize collection piece. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, and just from a prime media perspective, it is a really good question. I think around the world, you know, when you have a group of radio stations, you tend to see people grouping by formats or, you know, grouping by target markets and branding stations across regions. And what's really great about KFM and what we, you know, have the privilege of doing in prime media is, you know, KFM from an audience perspective is not, say, 947 in Cape Town, and 947 is not KFM in Gauteng. We celebrate the station's regionality. It is one of our USPs for the station, of course. Regionality and being local as a radio station, being regional, is really, really important in connecting with audiences. And we use data, and we understand our audiences very deeply in the Western Cape region, and we make sure that the station stands on its own. We don't just group by format. So it's not just the talk stations and the music stations with 702, Cape Talk, KFM, and 947. It's very much about the regionality. We have tried in many, many years gone by, where I do think that, you know, companies have tried to group the musics together and the talks and duplicate stations. It doesn't work. Every region and every region's people are very different. So maintaining regionality, I think, is the key to our station's success and our competitor success in the market.
Thanks, Stephen. Stephen's the station manager of KFM, and he spent a lot of time with that radio station from being a producer into the programming role. And we're going to have a look at a little bit of what makes KFM so successful. One of the stations that I enjoy listening to when I have an opportunity to travel to KwaZulu-Natal is East Coast Radio. And I've had an opportunity to join Bonnie Mkunu in our office previously. And those who work with Bonnie will know that Bonnie's passionate about education, and she's passionate about growth in people. And she says that if you impact education, you can impact the future of South Africa positively. Bonnie, so thanks very much for your time this morning. I was thinking East Coast Radio and Bonnie and Clunu are basically, they're synonymous with each other. And you've had a really good 6 years as the MD of East Coast. You've been nominated for 5 years in the South African Radio Awards, but East Coast Radio has never walked away with the Commercial Radio Station of the Year award. How does this affect you? How does it affect your team? And do you try harder to reach that pinnacle?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim, and good morning, everybody. Our payoff line says we are KZN's #1 for hit music station, of course. But for us, #1 is about everything that we do. We are a premium brand in KZN, so everything that we do has to exude that. So your question is, does it make us sad? How does it make us feel that we have not won the Station of the Year yet? For me, the big thing is that we have been nominated for the 5 consecutive years. That's one. It's a win halfway there, even though it's not 100%, but we're halfway there. And what it does for us, really, it helps us to keep going, because it just shows that we are doing something right. It keeps us going. I tell my team all the time that we can't be despondent. We consistently have to work hard in absolutely everything that we do. And our promise to ourselves and to the people that we serve, all our stakeholders, be it staff, be it shareholder, which is Kagiso Disa Holding, be it our advertisers and our audience, is that we will always show up and make sure that the content that we provide for our audience is uplifting, is binding KZN together, and it is really educational for all of us. So we respect the awards, we support the awards as a radio station in KZN, and we know that our day will come one day. They say save the best for last. So I know it's going to come in this lifetime.
Bonnie, I'm gonna say that if you win the Commercial Radio Station of the Year award this year, 2022, I'm not that I'm going to try and influence it, obviously, but I would very much enjoy to have a station visit in East Coast territory and come and live like a king with you and your staff. But we'll get to that later. A fellow KZN.
Amazing. Yeah, that will be absolutely amazing. I would like to do that. I mean, you mentioned a campaign that we've recently finished with King Price Insurance, where we smashed absolutely all targets that were set by the clients because exactly of what I've just said now. So we look forward to that, team.
Super. Elvin Pillay is also in KZN. He's been with the SABC for 30 years. Elvin, in your time at the SABC, must have seen some really interesting things. Sometimes with the SABC, I get the impression we take 2 steps forwards and 3 steps back. And maybe in the last year or two, the SABC are in a position now where they're taking 2 steps forward and maybe 1.5 steps back. I'm passionate about the SABC. I always have been. Sometimes, however, I do think that we need to check ourselves. But you're in a very interesting place with a station like Lotus. You have 5 languages, you cover 3 religious groups, you have a semi-national footprint, but you're still a minority niche station in many ways. But last year you walked away with a Public Radio Award of the Year. What's the kind of impact that Lotus has, and how difficult is your task within the SABC?
Thank you, Tim, and good morning to everyone joining us. If you look at the SABC, the media landscape has actually changed drastically. And in order to adapt to client and audience needs, change was necessary. And the influx of technologies has actually dictated that we play in a different sphere. And it is also exciting times at the SABC as we focus our energies on meeting clients' needs and also revenue growth as well. I think a more streamlined organization and agile business is going to assist us to reach these goals. Already we are reaping the benefits of a focused SABC. And then if you look at Lotus FM as a colorful brand that is amongst the portfolio of the SABC, we have a very niche market, and it's mainly the Indian people in South Africa that we target. And we meet all their needs that they require, from religion to language, and also keeping them informed, entertained, and educated on an ongoing basis but remaining quite relevant to what's actually happening in the community. Thank you.
Thanks
for that,
very
Tim.
much. Elvin also mentioned that he's a keen grower of bonsai trees, and I'm a bit disappointed that in the background that he has, I don't see any of his hard work, but we'll get to that later. Thanks, Elvin. The first time that I met Sharonika Nell from Pick FM was while I was judging the radio awards, and she had done an entry called Rooiwyn Sondag, and it was a mix of music, it was a mix of beat poetry, it was a mix of interviews, and it was an intense listening experience, but it won the award that year. She's been in broadcasting for 13 years. She's been with Pick FM as station manager for 8 years. Personally, she's won 5 radio awards, and her radio station has 21 awards, and is obviously doing something amazing in that space in campus radio. Sharonik, thanks very much for your time this morning. I wanted to ask you, from a radio awards perspective, something obviously happened with Pick FM. How did you consciously go about creating the winning formula to put Pick FM on the radio awards map?
Good morning. Thanks, Tim. I think for us, when I'm going to call it a shift that happened, we were very lucky that we had an upwards trajectory after, let's say, about 2014, 2015, where we started performing better at the radio awards. And the irony of that was, and I think what Alvin says, I couldn't help but take that little nugget as well. The second we stopped trying to compete in radio awards and we had to go back to basics, then that's when the shift happens. Because for us, it was always, oh, but we're a campus radio station. On the frequency, we are competing with big commercial radio stations, and we never could quite get there for obvious reasons. But then we decided, you know what? Stop thinking about the radio awards. Stop thinking about the station that's the frequency next to you. The second we decided that our community and our listener was more important than anything else, that's when the magic started happening. Because I think we were trying to duplicate what commercial radio was doing for a lot of years, and we felt sorry for ourselves when we weren't nominated in the radio awards. The second, when we stopped trying to compete, and also, I have to say this, and I've got the utmost respect for them, the pinnacle in campus radio, of course, is Tuks FM, and we had this blindfold on and this tunnel vision where we have to compete against Tuks. We don't share the same community. We don't share the same footprint. Why were we trying to compete? Now they are our best friends. We share ideas. We're happy when the other one actually does well at the radio awards. And we don't focus on the community in Pretoria because that's not our community. We try to reach the listener in our footprint and in our community. And I think that's where our shift came.
I think that's such an important point. As an industry, synergy is far more important than adverse competition. Yes, we do compete with each other in terms of footprint, we do compete for revenue, but the better that radio does overall, the better it is for the industry. It's easier for the industry to go into advertising agencies, do direct sales, and compete in a digital and a television and a print space. So I love the way that you've gone about it. Our last panelist spent many years working at Nice FM, and he gave it up to go to Pretoria to work for a station that's grown and evolved over 25 years. They're called Groot FM. He's currently the head of music. Peter Kloete, thanks very much for joining us today. I know you're currently busy with your honors in media and journalism at WITS, so you're a radio academic and you're a radio practitioner. I wanted to ask you, Groot FM has obviously done an amazing job in Gauteng, in Pretoria, and speaks to a very specific audience. And you've worked in community radio at 2 different stations. Are all community radio stations created equal?
Thanks for having me, Tim. Unfortunately, no. There's a couple of reasons why. Obviously, the biggest one is, financial reasons. Some community stations just can't get to where other community radio stations are with regards to finances. And I think the other red tape is obviously ICASA, with current regulations that might limit a couple of radio stations on what they have to achieve. I think one example is, their licensing regulations that stipulate how much news they have, and not a lot of community radio stations can afford having a news person or employing a news person. So that will, obviously gets down to the presenter themselves. But I think what makes most community radio stations equal is definitely the people in community radio. I think the passion is definitely the main driving force for community radio in South Africa.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, radio speaks to the individual. We know that technology is a communication enabler, but radio makes the world a less lonely space. And it's our ability as community radio stations to speak towards localism and to tap into that market. And Elvin, I want to pick up on that with you, specifically around catering towards a minority population group who have the right to hear and speak their language on the radio. How do you go about in the Lotus environment creating radio programming for 5 different language groups?
So basically, Tim, we broadcast in English, and what we do is create language programs in the evening slots for the 5 different languages from Monday to Friday to cater for them, which is actually 60 minutes long. This is very specific to the different language of the communities. And then also the engagement of all the Indian events that actually take place, like Diwali and other religious days that we actually celebrate as well. We have to be very concentrated with regards to actually broadcasting from those events to show, the upliftment of language and religion within the community. And I think the closer you get to your community, the more they appreciate you as a brand, that you're actually focusing on actually preserving the languages, preserving the religion as well. And if you look at, people in India and people in South Africa, we have, embraced religion in a different way as opposed to them. It's not everything that they do, which South Africans would do. South Africans have actually transformed with regards to religion and languages. We won't speak the language as articulated as by them. So these are the various things that we need to take into consideration, and also bringing those public intellectuals into the station from universities and other areas within the South African community to actually assist us with this language and religion aspects of programming. Thank you, Tim.
Ronnie, one of the things that East Coast Radio does really well, and I'm sure it must be part of your strategy as a station, is that you really seem to have a diverse set of listeners and you manage to cater for them. How's East Coast Radio gone about doing that?
Yeah, that's actually, Tim, it's one of our unique selling points as a radio station, and we pride ourselves in that. Out of all, if you look at the landscape in KZN, everybody targets a certain specific target market. But for us, our unique selling point is that we speak to everyone in KZN. And how we go about that is really just about understanding our target markets. Of course, it is well defined in terms of demographics, in terms of age, in terms of gender, and in terms of the SEM profile. So in everything that we do, and we know that once we understand that, it's very easy to speak to them and make meaningful sense in terms of content. So the tonality of what we say, communication in terms of what we say, and in terms of the activations that we do around the province has to just make sure that we speak across all the people of KZN. Of course, we understand that 80% of the population in KZN is Black people. The second biggest is Indian. The third biggest is white. And the last is the colored people. And all of them, they listen to us. And when they listen to us, they listen to East Coast Radio because they perceive us as the authority of everything that's KZN. So it is very important for us in terms of music, in terms of content, and in terms of the features that we have on air, that they speak to them. And what you find is that when people share the same SEM profile, it becomes less about I'm Black, I'm white, I'm Indian, but it becomes about respect. We all expect to be respected the same way. It's about love. We all respect to be loved the same way. So those are the psychographic things that we do, and we have to get them right in every touch point that we interact with the community in KZN. And I think my team gets it, and we get it right all the time.
Bonnie, you speak very passionately about being East Coast and being a brand for KZN. How do you instill that in your staff? Because a lot of people that you've employed aren't from KZN.
So if you look at our values, so we have the East Coast Radio values, and the first one of them is, it says we are proudly KZN, because it comes with the license condition, but we are a station for KZN. So KZN comes first in absolutely everything that we do. And what is fascinating, I mean, I'm a KZN girl. I was born here. I went to university here. I've always worked here. So KZN love is just, it's in everything that I do. So we try and inculcate that in absolutely everything that we do. So what do we do? Like we have partnerships. Like we are very strong partners of the Sharks team, and you can't think of KZN and not think about the Sharks and not think about the Sharks rugby. We are partners with Amazulu, the football club, and that speaks to the people we intend speaking to. We are partners with Hollywood Bet, the betting company that's like doing wonderful things in KZN. We are partners with the KZN cricket team. So in those things, so we really try and make it every day, obviously, that at the center of absolute everything that we are doing, KZN takes precedence. I mean, even if you look at, for instance, East Coast Radio is one of we are number 1 or number 2 every month in terms of digital unique browsers on our websites. And one of the biggest things that people look out for is if anything happens in KZN, they'll come to East Coast Radio websites to verify, because they consider us as the authority of everything KZN, but also as a credible source of information about what's happening in KZN. So all those things. So we weave those things in absolutely everything that we do. So the KZN pride, you must see, if you come here, there's quite a lot that we have done, even in our own working environment, to really preserve the pride of what makes KZN KZN. So yeah, and everybody gets it.
Stephen, Bonnie touched on something. She spoke about audience profiling. She spoke about really understanding the audience, and being a radio creative who's moved into a management position. There's always this conversation about the art and the science, which is like the data and the creativity. How do you find that in the KFM environment? How do you approach the art and the science?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a tension you've got to hold, right? I think, when KFM really hit its success, we started changing our approach, which was using data as the cornerstone, as I know Bonnie does with East Coast, in everything we did to understand the listeners. Gut is gut, and we all have that, we call it the dark art of programming, right? Which is like, you're not sure, there's no way of explaining, but you just know what's right and you know what's wrong. But it's not the answer to everything, because we might think that it's great to play an 80s song at the top of every hour because people in the Western Cape love the 80s. Well, let's see, whether that's true in the data. And using your data, which is not a silver bullet, as the cornerstone of what you do, and informing decisions you make, and even just to confirm what you think you know about audiences, and to help you understand audiences, even more. Every time you're doing market studies and research, I look at the Holly Ray quote behind Bonnie, and I just keep thinking deeper and deeper. And that's just our quest ongoing, is to continue to understand the audiences, what they love, what they're passionate about, and what they care about. And our job is to celebrate those things and connect around those things, whether it's content, music, primal content, or that sense of community and regionality. And, it's so difficult in this country, I think, as Bonnie had said, we are quite divided in many ways, but, East Coast, like KFM, is a place that represents, and the audience profile represents, the makeup of the province. And that's a really special thing to have, because it means, demographics don't matter. It's about connecting around, what's important to the audience and finding the common threads as opposed to what makes us different.
We're speaking all things around the Radio Awards, www.radioawards.co.za. We are inviting South African radio practitioners to enter your radio station and the amazing work that you've done. The scope of work for this year is going to be from the 1st of January 2021 till the 31st of March 2022. And there are going to be certain limitations on entries for stations. So do go onto the Radio Awards website and have a look at that. And again, don't leave your entries until the last minute. The organizers have been very specific that there won't be any late entries allowed, but you've got plenty of time until the 31st of May to get your entries into the website radioawards.co.za. It's a simple process. It's a step-by-step. Register your profile and compete to win. It could be the career changer that you've been looking for. In conversation, we have Bonnie Mkhunu, who's the MD of East Coast Radio. Sharonika Nell joins us from Potchefstroom, where she's the station manager of PIK FM. We also have Peter Klute, who's the head of music at Groot FM in Pretoria. Alvin Pillay is the Lotus FM program manager, and Stephen Werner joins us from Cape Town as KFM station manager. Peter, I wanted to go back to you, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the fabric of community radio in South Africa, and specifically around the amount of conversation that happens between community radio stations. Do you think that as a subsection of the industry, community radio speaks to each other enough?
Thanks, Tim. No, not nearly enough. And, thanks to the arena events and the radio awards, that gives a platform for people to get together in the radio community. When you look at, every year, except now for COVID, which you did online, but it gives an opportunity for community radio stations to plug in and listen to other leaders in the radio community, with the stuff that they do before the actual award ceremony. And this year I assume will be the same. But I think there could be done more with regards to working together and trying to help each other in the community sector.
Thanks, Peter. I've seen it before at Radio Awards. And Sharonik, the next question's aimed at you, and specifically for Bonnie and Stephen maybe to listen to. I've sat at Radio Awards where someone from campus or community radio stations wants something, and you see the station manager, the program manager of a big radio station look at each other, and someone makes a note. And you know what's happening there, that on Monday, commercial radio station is going to phone winner of best radio presenter and offer them a job. The relationship between commercial radio and community/campus radio, is it in the right space? And specifically, is commercial radio trying hard enough?
Tim, I'm going to give you an alternative ending to that scenario that you just painted. So they look at each other, they make the note, but no calls come on Monday morning. I have to be quite honest with you. I've had both sides of the coin with that relationship with commercial radio. And this is an age-old fight that we have every single year on every single platform. I think everybody knows when you have a conversation like this, where you have campus and commercial on the same panel, this question is going to come up. And we've heard every single argument on both sides. I've got to start and say that I have had incredible relationships with the commercial sector. And looking at Bonnie, I've got a few alumni sitting at East Coast, which I'm very proud about. And they are doing very well. I think I have to think out of a programming and station manager's point of view as well. Geographically, it is difficult. Yes, you do have campuses located quite close to most of the commercial and even the bigger community and even PBS stations. So the opportunity is there. I think also just at a practical note, and I'm just trying this to say, Stephen, Bonnie, I do understand the challenges. We don't expect you to come running and call me every single day and say, do you have someone, and call off the Radio Awards, because there is a practicality. You do program shifts at times where students at campus radio stations are still studying. So they're not necessarily going to say yes to your offer. So it does make that difficult. I do think, though, that we might find a golden highway in the sense of tap into it after the Radio Awards. Keep your eye on that person, because you know that your program shifts are coming. So the calls aren't necessarily going to come on that Monday morning. And I think we all probably have a little bit of a headache still. So I'll give you about till the Wednesday and the Thursday after in-person Radio Awards. I think the main thing what's important is like I said, we don't expect you to get our presenters, our newsreaders, our producers to you with open arms. Maybe connect with the station managers and the program managers of the campus sector. I think at this stage, that's a relationship that's not necessarily strong enough, because yes, of course, you're keeping your ear and your eye on the ground, but the person that knows who's leaving the station at the end of the year, for example, that's the station and program manager. They are going to be the people that get you the best talent, not necessarily the student that you're going to call up. If that answered your question in any way, Tim.
It does. I think it opens a very interesting conversation between us, because the reality, Stephen, you'll also know that talent is important to what we do. And we're constantly looking for talent. You know, like we found people previously podcasters. We found them on YouTube. Bonnie and East Coast have recently done a talent search. And Bonnie, maybe you can tell us if that process was successful for you. I also know, Bonnie, to that point, you work with Durban Youth Radio as KZN's #1 and the commercial giant in your province. You've reached out to the community radio stations in your sector and said, is there something that we can do together? Talk to us a little bit, Bonnie, about that concept of finding talent.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Tim. For us, honestly, we look at community radio stations as partners and not competition at all with East Coast Radio. And we look at it two ways. One, from an operations assistant point of view, and then looking out for talent. DYR, I mean, in KZN, there's about 27 community radio stations. If my memory serves, there's about 27. And I can tell you now, like that, during the looting that happened in KZN last year in July, we all remember that, we had about 5 radio stations that were looted. And fortunately, we had just done our revamp here at the station, and some of the parts were not complete, but a lot of our equipment was taken to, it's called Iteku, Ugu, Dogozo, and DYR, and Kora. We were able to assist those stations that were affected by the looting. So from an operations point of view, we always make ourselves available. And I like the point you make, Charoneke, in terms of making sure that we work with the station managers of those community radio stations and assist where we can. So that's operations. But also from a talent point of view, last year we did a huge campaign where it was called East Coast Radio Talent Search, where we were looking for radio talent across the province. We made all the radio stations in KZN aware, and the plan, it was just before, I think it was lockdown level 4, we thought we were going to go around the province, you know, finding talents in different parts of KZN. But it ended up all happening online, and then the grand finale, of course, was held at the station. But to just give you a snippet, I mean, Jace Wu, who's now a drive show presenter on East Coast Radio, comes from DYR, which is a campus radio. We have Mike V, who comes from Verts, a campus radio. We have Sam Ele, who also comes from DYR. So there's quite a few. We look at a community radio station really as a fertile ground for us. And if it works, then it will work for commercial radio. So we must have that synchronized way of working together with the community radio stations in KZN. And currently, it really does work. And it's, for me, it's just about being deliberate about what it is that you are doing with them to make sure that the ecosystem works for all of us. Thanks.
The environment has also dramatically changed in that 15 or 20 years ago, community radio was a place that you'd want to try and leave to go to commercial radio. Peter, you've proved that you've moved between Nice FM and Kurt FM. Community radio has become a seriously viable sector in this country. Not only does it aggregate collectively huge amounts of audience, community radio has also done a really good job of tapping into hyper-localized businesses and international agency sales because of the kinds of people that you speak to. This journey of working in community radio as a career, would you say to anyone who's aspiring to join this business that it's something worth doing? Is it a viable place to build a career?
Yeah, Tim, I think this would actually make a very good case study at university. But there is a couple of community radio stations that really, hit the mark. And, that business model, obviously needs to taken over by other smaller community radio stations, for success. And, looking at Groot FM success, I think there's definitely 3 things, and Stephen and Bonnie also mentioned a couple of them. So, if I can give advice to community radio stations, to be more successful, there's 3 things that stand out. One is obviously know your listener, and we do continual research to know who our listener is. The second thing I think which is very important, is content and a good program manager. And I think we've got definitely one of the best program managers. We talked about earlier before we went live about feedback, and that's also very crucial. Program managers need to give feedback to their presenters, and I know that we do it at least per presenter once every 3 or 2 weeks. sit back, listen to their audio, and improve on that, because that's the only way that presenters will improve. And I think the third thing that makes a community radio station successful is definitely their music selection. Despite regulations like ICASA that determines we need to do 80% and that. So those three things I think is key for community radio stations to be more successful.
And I mean, the interesting thing there, Pete, is a lot of what you're saying is you'll see your commercial colleagues nodding their heads, because understanding your audience is key, feeding back. Those things aren't unique to community radio. They form part of every radio operation. Alvin, I want to come to you very quickly, in that you run a very niche station for a minority audience. Where do you go and find talent to keep Lotus FM relevant, to keep them fresh, and to make sure that you're on the cutting edge of delivering for your audience?
Yeah, thank you for that, Tim. It is quite difficult, to actually get talent and actually search for them as well. But I think, when we look at talent, we look at tertiary institutions, we look at religious organizations, we speak to stakeholders as well. This is where we, in fact, from campuses as well. Also, when we actually broadcasting and we are at a specific event, you have that entertainment bit and people are allowed to come and showcase their talent as well. And you get, a few of them that actually got, the PR aspect of it, or becoming potential presenters. But my normal stance is, what I normally do is those potential people, I bring them onto the station and start training them and see exactly, which line will they follow, whether it's producing, presenting, or from a technical aspect as well. And we tend to give more the youngsters a break to actually do that, because they are the one who are the aspiring type of presenters for the future. The way technology has actually changed, this actually assists us as well. Yes, we want to, like East Coast Radio, like what Bonnie has actually said, embark on a talent search. We want to do that nationally as well. So it is a challenge, because if you're looking for a religious or a language presenter, they must actually be proficient in those languages and religions, be able to speak the language, and then also not only speak that language, but be able to speak the other language of the Indian people as well. So even the understanding of music is another big concern for us, because, how do you get a presenter like from a community station that was simply just English broadcasting only and playing English songs, and then you get the person over to actually pronounce the names of Indian songs? It becomes extremely difficult. So we have to be very circumspect of the type of people that we bring in, and where we search for them as well. And as I mentioned, religious organizations, other events actually showcase this talent, that we actually try attracting those people from there.
I think the message to talent is, for every challenge, there's an opportunity. Stephen, we joked a little bit earlier about the radio award hanging behind you in your office. This concept of awards, how important do you think it is for the industry, and what does it do for the morale of your radio station when you win an award?
I don't think people see the full value in there's really three ways. The one is, morale and internal morale and celebration of talent. I mean, we know that particularly on-air talent, give them the smack when you need to, and then hug them the next day. You've got to manage that relationship with your presenters and really give them a lot of reverence. They're putting themselves on the line, making themselves incredibly vulnerable every single day. And you've got to celebrate the work that they do. It's they say 3 hours in a studio is like an 8-hour day. It takes a lot out of you to share so much of yourself in connecting. And it's another vehicle that we can use internally, and we do use internally, to celebrate and recognize our people, and not just the on-air teams. The off-air teams often are the people that work behind the scenes and always going, the presenters always get the glory. This is a way to celebrate those off-air teams in that engine room. And that's why I love that we have the Station Manager's Choice Award now, where, you can really celebrate someone that perhaps isn't in the studio, but really makes the radio station run from day to day. I think the other two areas are, from a consumer perspective, celebrating the consumer and the listener, who are part of your family, and celebrating something that they really feel ownership of, which is the station's theirs. They see the station as their station. When they don't like something, go, why did you do that on my station? Because they have deep ownership and deep connection. And the third area, which I think is often forgotten, is the trade marketing. Is marketing from a commercial perspective, where you're taking this award out in the industry and you're saying, we won, best breakfast show, station of the year, and using that to bring interest into not just the station, but the medium and the industry, and to celebrate great work and unlock revenue. Because certainly for myself and Bonnie, we are commercial entities and we do have commercial interests, and that's the model. So really using that to celebrate the work and the creativity. And also, if you have a client partner or a campaign, we won an award for a campaign for a stunt a few years ago. And it was really a great way of recognizing a partnership with the client, and really helped us unlocking revenue and more creativity and building more trust with that partner.
Alvin, winning last year at the 2021 Radio Awards, was it a game changer for Lotus?
Absolutely, Tim. Absolutely. It was something that we celebrated. In fact, we're still celebrating as a radio station. In the existence of Lotus FM for 38 years, it's the first time that we won, PBS Radio Station of the Year, and it just uplifted the morale of people, and the work that was put in, the hard work that was put in. It was actually rewarded with actually us becoming Station of the Year. So, even if you look at, the feedback with regards to clients, investing on the station, and the audience actually being really chuffed about, the station winning the award. It was such a celebratory moment for us. And I think, also we actually deserve that award because we put a lot of effort in over that year, going out in the community, being community centric, and more so, fulfilling those needs of our listeners, and also getting a lot involved in CSI projects, throughout the country. As you mentioned, that we are a semi-national radio station. So we went to the corners of South Africa where we could broadcast from, got participation from the audience, whatever we did. And, when we were having a conversation as well, Tim, you can't have a radio station just sitting in a studio and broadcasting. The radio environment has changed drastically. You need to get out. You need to be with your audience. You need to show them that, you care about them, and what difference can you make in their lives as well. So yeah, these things attributed and assisted us with winning the Station of the Year. And then also, if you look at your programming as well, great focus was actually placed into the type of content we do. We've got a variety of content that we need to look at from from a lifestyle point of view, from a magazine point of view, from drive shows, chart shows, etc. How do we tweak these to make them more appealing to the audience? And this really worked well for us. Hence the reason why our breakfast show has won 3 years in a row PBS Breakfast Station of the Year. So that was an excellent achievement. And from there, we said, let's build on becoming the Station of the Year. And as you know, we have major players in the PBS industry to actually compete with. But, great thanks to the Almighty for actually assisting us to get there, and, the support of our audience and clients as well. Thank you.
Bonnie, you've managed to be nominated for the Commercial Radio Station of the Year 5 times in a row. How do you get East Coast Radio to stand out every year?
Yeah, I just think, honestly, it's about going back to basics, in absolutely everything that we do, from a marketing point of view, from taking out the brand from on air to the people, and making sure that we connect with KZN in the most meaningful way. That's one. And then making sure that our talent is relatable to the audiences that listen to them every day. I mean, we have 1.2 million people in KZN that listen to East Coast Radio on a daily basis. So that for us is important. And then the community, just making sure that we are of service to the community in KZN. Just as an example, I mean, during the looting and the unrest that we saw in South Africa last year, East Coast Radio championed a Unite KZN project where we worked with all other radio stations. I worked with Kelvin for the first time. I was like, come on, guys, we have to get this right and speak to KZN. And it was an absolute phenomenal success, because all of us as radio heads, we were like, we can't let this happen and us sit and do nothing, yet we know that radio has so much influence to the communities that we serve. We ran a Unite KZN campaign, which even the premier of the province, when he was delivering his speech, he mentioned as part of his speech because of the work we had done. So all that, and really make sure that the listener is at the heart of everything. So that's what we do every day. And we have won. Our breakfast show has won. Our drive show during Bongani Mtolo's time also won a drive show of the year. It's just the station of the year that hasn't happened, and it will happen sometime soon. It definitely will happen sometime soon. Thank you.
Being part of the fabric of the community is obviously so hugely important, and I think that's one of the things that make East Coast stand out. Bonnie, so well done to that. We're in conversation about the Radio Awards, www.radioawards.co.za. If you would like to enter, entries are now open and they'll close on the 31st of May. Go and register a new profile. Even if you have a profile from last year, you'll be required to register a new profile. Go and make sure that when you register your profile, you put yourself into the right category so that you can enter your material to compete with other people who operate within your sector of the environment. And I suppose one of the things that I'd like to try and find out, and maybe Stephen, I'll go to you, is when you put together awards or entries for the Radio Awards, what's your approach from a KFM perspective? Because there's definitely a way in framing the material that you've done for a year to put in front of a judge who particularly doesn't know anything about your radio station. What do you think is the piece of advice that we need to give people to do better entries?
Yeah, I think there's a first thing is keep it simple. I think we try and put bells and whistles and things and overproduce things because we think it sounds cool. We know in radio things are hot and overproduced and we think it sounds amazing. You actually lose the listener. And I think this is a listener, this is an audience member. We've got to treat this audience member like a new listener, like a P2 or P3 or a new listener to the station. Put your best work up front. Don't think that you're going to end with the crescendo. We know the way listeners listen and people are, as in life, on radio. Put your best work up front where you've got their attention, like you would in a link or in an hour, in your quarter hours. And just make sure that you're telling a story. We're all storytellers. So make sure that you have the story, that the resets are there so it makes sense. And, if you've got a 6 minutes time limit, if you've only got 4 minutes of really great work, don't put in another 2 minutes to make up the 6. It's my view. Put in the 4 minutes and let that tell a story. And then really understand what you're trying to achieve with each piece. We can talk about, and Alvin, probably find in your station of the year and your, the reels that you submit, you really are making sure you're profiling very deliberately because you've got attention for 6 minutes. You've got to profile the community, the listener engagement, the presenter's ability to tell a story, the resonance with current affairs, perhaps particular interviews and interview styles and guests that you've had on the station, and all the different elements you're really deliberately trying to profile in that reel. Don't just put only caller moments and caller topics. Try and profile the fabric of the station so you're really getting a snapshot.
I think that's such great advice. If you've ever been a judge for the Radio Awards, sometimes you listen to something and you think, well, it's not bad, but is there more? So profiling everything that your show is good at, everything that your station's good at, and those little bits and pieces throughout the year that really made you famous for being a favorite amongst your audience. That's really excellent advice. Thanks very much to Stephen Werner. Stephen's the station manager of KFM, and we're in conversation with some previous winners of the Radio Awards. Bonnie Mklunu is the MD of East Coast Radio and KZN. Sharonika Nell is the station manager of Pick FM, and their radio station's done incredibly well over time with 21 awards. And Sharonika, I'm going to come to you. Peter Kluter is the head of music at Kruit FM in Pretoria, and Alvin Pillay is the Lotus FM program manager. Sharonika, I wanted to ask you, in the 21 awards that your radio station has won, have you been surprised by some of the winners, or have they all been deliberate?
Oh, we've been shocked to our socks in some. I think maybe anyone that's ever compiled a Radio Award entry has had at least one moment, even when the nominations come out, that you have the highest hopes for a show or a presenter. And sometimes they don't even get nominated. And then you get to the next category and you're like, I rushed this entry just to get it into that 3 entry max for a category, and you're shocked. And I think that kind of speaks to getting what we have in our minds as our expectations. for our talent and for our shows and for our projects out of our minds. Because also, I think what happens is, of course, you make notes throughout the year where you're going to find your content when it comes to Radio Awards time. And then you listen to that audio back, and it doesn't have the same impact as it had when you listened to it live, or quite the opposite. You listen to something that you never even thought would sound good now. So it's such an interesting exercise to build these entries. And I completely agree with Stephen with regards to pick your moments and a spectrum of everything that you do. And I think exactly what you said now, Tim, I think where our shock factor came from is we kind of build sometimes these entries on the brand of the presenter or the brand of what we think the show and presenter is. And then it's completely not what a judge would hear. Because, of course, we are a little bit one-sided and we are biased when we put these things together. I think for us, the shocks came when, like, I knew they were good. I think the best example of this when we won Afternoon Drive show 2 years ago, I knew how good this team was. And I really hoped the judges would see it, but it wasn't a category that we traditionally had done well in, because I think that's also in our minds. You have certain categories that you know you dominate. KFM, weekend and music has been your playground over the last couple of years. And there's a reason for that as well. So I think also to realize, don't necessarily focus on your dominant categories. If I look back on those 21 wins, we're very lucky that we've kind of won in every category over the years. So I use that as a little bit of a bar to go back on and say, but listen, it's been 5 or 6 years. Why are my news guys not coming up? And that's a way for us to also do a little bit of quality control and see, but we kind of tend to focus on our musics, our daytimes and our primetime shows. Where should we be focusing so our nominations actually also reflect our quality a little bit better?
Great advice from a station that's done amazing work over the last 5 years in really establishing themselves as a leader in the campus radio field. Peter, I want to ask you, the community radio sector, and specifically around awards, is going to be slightly different this year because one of the stations that have been winning a lot in that space, Hot FM, have now moved into a different licensing category and will no longer be able to compete as a community radio station. What's your advice to other community radio stations who haven't entered the awards previously?
I think the one platform that the Radio Awards give is that if you think, I think the year before they had over 1,600 entries. So that means that if you get into the nomination phase of the best 3 in that specific category, which means that you are literally one of the best out of 50 or sometimes more entries of other radio stations. So I think, you know, that by itself, just to be nominated is already a huge honor. And then obviously if you win, to put your radio station on the map. So I would definitely encourage all program managers from community radio stations to put pressure on their jocks to submit their entries, listen to it together, and enter.
Stephen, I want to ask you quickly, you mentioned earlier about working with talent and how important the award can be for a team. The reverse is also true, and Bonnie, you may also understand and know this, is when a team has put together a lot of hard work and they've been gunning for it, a breakfast show or an afternoon drive show, and they don't win. I mean, sure, the open bar is one way to approach it, but that's not a long-term solution. What's your message to guys who've tried before, Stephen, and who haven't won?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I love because awards don't matter unless you win them, right? At the Radio Awards. I mean, it's not always easy. I've had presenters and teams who are actually gutted when they're not nominated, and they've got really good pieces of work and they're great shows and great reels. It's all relative to the competition, and we'll never hear those other reels. And the standards are very high at the Radio Awards, which is what a problem to have in this industry. You've got to turn this into an opportunity. And Sharon, you can mention this around, hang on, I'm holding ourselves accountable, I'm checking the bar, I'm kind of going, well, it's been about 5 or 6 years since, say, as you said, your news readers, your news team had won, and really trying to turn it into a motivation. I think that's what you've got to do. It's okay to have the time to feel, and you've got to recognize those feelings and not say, be the parent that says, I'll get over it. Got to recognize those feelings and then turn into the ops saying, but hang on, let's think about next year. And that approach usually works, because it might lead to a nomination and then an eventual win. So you've got to allow for the tears, the metaphorical tears, but then you've also got to, at some point, stop it from affecting, the sense of success or importance or relevance, because it can even affect the on-air product for the teams that take it incredibly seriously. It affects their morale. So you've really got to try and turn it around, and quite quickly, because no one cares about winning until you've won, right? And I see that often. It's like, oh well, who cares? Well, you do care, and the reason you're saying that is because you didn't win this year. So you've got to maintain that balance.
Absolutely, and I suppose the other mantra is, if we remember that everything that we do is about our audience. And that when you haven't won, pick yourself up, because the audience is still going to be there and they still want to be entertained, they want to be informed, and they want to be engaged. And that's the reason we do this job. Elvin, if I gave you 30 seconds for a final message to people listening today about the Radio Awards specifically, and about minority stations who sometimes maybe don't feel that they should enter because they're not going to be noticed, what would that be?
You never know if your talent is really good. And I would say for the minority radio stations, enter the awards so that you can actually see how you actually fare amongst the best in the industry. And as we mentioned, with regards to just being nominated, it's such an important and a stepping stone. And being nominated, it means try again next year, and until you actually succeed. So, the playing field is open. If you've got that talent and you actually understand, your presentation style, which could be different from what someone else is offering, and you can be more innovative and creative, I would say, everyone stands a chance to becoming a winner if you enter the Radio Awards.
Peter, from a community radio station perspective and the work that Kruit does, where you're one of the bigger players, your message to community radio and the Radio Awards that are coming up, what would that be?
But I think if they can, obviously get involved, and I would encourage all community radio stations to attend the conference if there's going to be one this year, and also the workshops, and then network, with other community radio stations.
That's, I think, hugely important, is that we often as an industry, we don't celebrate ourselves enough, and the Radio Awards are really an opportunity to do that. And that concept of networking, we all have very similar challenges. It doesn't matter if you're working for a small community radio station, even potentially an online station, or a big commercial place. We have real challenges, and there's a lot of sharing around that. Shonique, I mean, you're obviously going to be going for Station of the Year. I'm sure your friends in Pretoria are going to be doing the same things. And there'll be other players who will be saying, well, what about us? Your advice to people and the Radio Awards from a station that's really embraced this concept of winning?
Focus on the basics. Every single person on this panel has said this. Please forget about the bells and whistles that Stephen also said. That is the most irritating thing when judging an entry. Focus on your strengths. No one knows your station better than you do. Show that to a judge, and remember who you are. Don't try to be your competition. Own who you are, because that's when you win.
Stephen, the comment that I'd like for you to make is, what's your advice to talent who are potentially using the Radio Awards as something that they can put in their demo or their CV? What do you tell young people from an awards perspective that's going to become a career game changer?
I've worked with a lot of talents, both talk and music formats, and I think the most successful talents, both on air and off air, have stayed coachable. Be coachable, take feedback. You're not, especially the old dogs, I'm hitting 17 years in this industry. We have this saying as one of our winning habits at Prime Media and the broadcasting team. It's kick the tires and light the fires. Don't just do it the way you've done it before. Don't just assume you know everything, and don't get stuck in the trap of success or unconscious inability. Whether you're new or you're seasoned, be coachable. The best athletes in the world work with their coaches. They do playback, they listen. You can be a Springbok player. You get feedback, and don't be beyond feedback. I think, we in the commercial space, Bonnie, we sometimes see that, but the most successful presenters that I worked with, like, Darren Simpson, Carl Wasey, they've been doing this a long time. They take feedback, and that's why they continue to be relevant and continue to refine their craft. It's very easy to get into the success trap, and never allow that to happen.
Be coachable. What a great piece of advice. Stephen, I'm going to wish you very good luck for chasing the commercial radio station of the year. Bonnie, I know that's the one that you're looking for, but what would your message be to station managers who want to try and inspire teams outside of the awards? You've done an amazing job over 6 years. As an MD or a station manager, what's the kind of messaging that you need to give your staff to build their morale?
I think I can't emphasize this enough. That's understand what makes you different and stick to that. Focus on that. And then the second thing is, one of my favorite living quotes that I live by every day is that we can't all be famous, but we can all be great. Even if you don't win, just make sure that your craft is as great every day, not someday, but absolutely every day. And then your time will come, like the East Coast Radio time will come this year. Watch that space.
Wishing you the best of luck, Bonnie. Bonnie Mklunu is the MD of East Coast Radio. Sharon Nikanel joined us today from Potchefstroom. She's the station manager of PIK FM. Pieter Klute is the head of music at Groot FM, and Groot FM, a previous award winner at the Radio Awards. Elvin Pillay is an SABC veteran with 30 years of experience. He's currently the Lotus 7 program manager, and Stephen Werner is the station manager at KFM. Don't forget to click to www.radioawards.co.za. Entries are now open. The material being judged is from January 2021 until the 31st of March 2022. I know that we've done some amazing stuff as the radio industry, and we're looking forward to hearing your entries. If you do have any queries, there's a contact us button on the Radio Awards website. To the panelists that joined us this morning, Bonnie, Niabonga, Elvin, namaste, to Sharon Nika and Peter Bayadanki, and to the viewers and to Stephen Werner, thank you very much. My name's Tim Zunckel. It's been an absolute pleasure talking radio with you today, and we look forward to more engaging conversations as we turn up the volume on winning.